Back in July, I received a Filippo Loreti for the very first time because they wanted to show me and you that they've changed. Now, I made it very clear that I was doing that review on the basis that I could be completely honest with every single one of you about the piece and the company, and surprisingly enough, they agreed. My review was exactly that, and I told you everything that you should know. I'll be honest, I didn't know how they were going to take it. They absolutely loved it. They loved it so much that they decided to send me their new Agate dial diver. So I have that in today, and we'll be asking, is it worth the price tag? My name's Jason, I'm your watch guy today. Let's get into it. I honestly didn't expect Filippo Loreti to want to work with me again. I didn't hold back in my last review at all. But their next email thanked me for my transparency. And one interesting thing that they pointed out was their new creative director, which you have to think has something to do with the difference that you're seeing in their new releases. Now, while that's interesting and all, it's not as interesting as the watch that I have today. They've actually done something here that I've only ever seen once before. And that was from Zelos. I absolutely loved the agate dial that I saw in that watch. Now, I'm not going to sit here and compare Zelos and Filippo Loreti. They are different leagues. And we all know that. That being said, this is a pretty solid watch. I love the colour of the dial against that matted bezel. It almost gives me the Breitling Super Ocean vibes. But you know, on an affordable level. The pattern that stone dial has is unique through every piece. My one's definitely more subdued than they can be, but I love the effect of those hour markers floating above that dial. Along with that, as I mentioned, the matte black dial accents it beautifully. It gives that dial the space to be the showpiece of the watch as it should be. We are packing the ever reliable NH35 movement. That movement's an absolute staple in the affordable market, and that's because it's a workhorse. The applied markers sit very high above the dial, and I love the sense of depth that gives to the display. As well as that, the borders are in a high polished finish which matches perfectly to the handset. The handset is a simple sword style handset, but I'm really glad that I'm not looking at a Mercedes handset here. At the 3 o'clock we do have a date window, and that is highlighted by the Cyclops on the crystal. I'm definitely a fan of the triangle mark at the 12 o'clock, but I just can't help but think it should have had more presence. The best thing for me with this agate dial, aside from the beautiful colour, is the way that the print of the logo and the specs almost float above it. You have to look really closely, but when you do, that little shadow, it's beautiful. Now let's address the elephant in the room. This diver obviously gains most of its inspiration from the Rolex Submariner, which definitely isn't uncommon, but definitely has to be noted. The case shape throughout, as well as the bracelet, is definitely from those mines over in Switzerland. I will say the finishing is a good level for the price that you are paying for the piece, and the high polished sides are definitely on brand, but wouldn't have been my choice. The crown sits between some protective crown guards, and it has a good level of grip as well as being signed. It's also very well sized, and along with that grip, it means that it makes the screw down nature, hand winding and setting your piece much easier. The screw down case back certainly fits the Rolex motif, but with much more decoration. The diver and shark motif definitely fits the design brief for this piece. Altogether, the watch is provided with 200 meters of water resistance. As you should know by now, that is my acceptable entry level for an actual dive piece. You know, one that's going to come off your desk. If you don't know that, it is probably a sign that you are one of the 95% of people who watch my videos and haven't subscribed. So do yourself a favor, go down below, just hit that subscribe button. You'll thank me later. The case is matched with a sapphire crystal, exactly what you would expect at this price point, and as I mentioned earlier, it has a Cyclops to highlight the date at 3 o'clock. The bezel has a coin edge grip to it, 120 click motion, and honestly that tool-like click is absolutely solid. Not what I expected, but glad that's what I received. That's usually where you can whittle out the more cheaply produced pieces over the ones that have had a little bit more work go into them. The insert looks to be a ceramic with a matte effect to it. I say it looks because they haven't actually listed the material on their website, but from pieces that I've seen in the past and my experience, it definitely looks ceramic. And as I mentioned earlier, it really highlights that fiery volcanic looking dial. The bracelet exactly what you'd expect. It's the Oyster style, but it has a good level of adjustment with those screw links, and we even have quick release spring bars. The fit to the wrist is not really anything to complain about. Very much like a lot of other dive watches, I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear that. And it makes a lot of sense when you think of the dimensions. It comes in with a 40mm diameter, which is quickly becoming a industry standard. As you'd also expect, 13mm thick. As I say, almost standard for a dive piece right now. Perfect type of range for me to wear a watch. Can't really complain. Honestly, at £264, the watch itself, I can recommend. Obviously, there's a lot of competition around that type of price on the market, but I've certainly seen a lot worse. That doesn't mean that I get to pass in the moan section though. Now, the display is really nice to look at, but I just can't help but think that triangle should have had much more presence. It should have been bigger. It should have really shown you the dominance of that 12 o'clock. I feel like that's a missed opportunity. Beyond that, the clasp is tiny and it only has 3 levels of micro adjustment. I know that some people can live with that. I just feel like around this type of price, we need to be paying more attention to those smaller details. Finally, I am not a fan of a Cyclops on a display. It's just not for me. I know it works for some people, but that is a more personal gripe for myself. Now, other than those improvements, I can definitely recommend this watch, but that doesn't go to say that everything I said in my last video doesn't still stand. So if you are considering buying this piece or any of their other watches, make sure you go and watch that video first. Going on the watch alone, it's definitely worth £264. I think the dial really elevates that piece and they just need to keep pushing in this type of direction. Thanks for watching today, guys. I appreciate Filippo Loreti for sending this one in for me and doing so after I've been completely clear about being honest about the watch. It shows they want the criticism. They want to know where they can improve their pieces or their customer service or their brand as a whole. Once again, as I said in my last video, not all is forgiven, but they're moving in the right direction. It's not only my opinion that matters though, so let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Remember, subscribe to the channel and I will see you in the next one.